So why did the web developer go to therapy? Because he had too much margin and not enough padding. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Learning Web Development with Norbert PM. I'm Norbert PM. I teach web development. And in today's video, we're going to learn CSS. This is a CSS crash course. Now, this crash course is part of my big venture here to teach web development from the beginning. This is an entire playlist. The video before this was HTML crash course. That is, I also did a couple of courses, a couple of videos on Visual Studio Code, on how to install Visual Studio Code, how to set it up for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and what are the best extensions for that. So definitely check out those videos. Actually, I'm going to leave a link in the video description that is going to send you to my big blog post when I have each and every step and each and every video. So definitely check that one out. If not, then stay tuned because we're going to learn here CSS. Because in this comprehensive CSS crash course, we'll learn and also we'll cover everything you need to know to get started with CSS. Whether you're a complete beginner or looking for just to refresh your CSS skills, maybe you started CSS and you let it go because it can be annoying sometimes. This guide will help you to understand the basics of CSS and how to style web pages, websites, web pages effectively. Okay, so first of all, there are not going to be any slides. This is not like my big courses with the slides, explanations, downloadable resources. Actually, there is one downloadable resource. That's everything that we're going to type out here. We're going to actually create another folder. This right here is what we covered in the HTML course, crash course that is. But everything that I'm going to do here, the entire code will be down in a separate blog post that is going to be linked to the major blog. So just follow the link in the description. It's going to be okay. You're going to find everything. Don't worry about it. So first things first, put this up. What is CSS? Now the abbreviation, it stands for Cascading Style Sheet. Now, why is it cascading? You will see when we write CSS, it is then written from the browser in a cascading way. So basically, if you write something here and you write the same thing here, but you write it in another color, you're going to overwrite whatever you wrote above it. We're going to come to that. So think of HTML as the structure of a web page, like the walls and the roof of a house. I'm a construction engineer, so let's do some construction here. And the CSS is then the paint. Okay, so it's what makes it live, kind of. It's the decoration actually of the web page. So CSS controls the visual presentation of the HTML content. Okay. Now, how to add HTML to a CSS? Now, first things first, we're going to start here. So if you don't have any kind of folder created, just create a folder on your desktop, drag and drop it in your Visual Studio Code, and let's get started. I just called this code, and we're going to create a folder here, HTML crash course, and move everything that I have here into this little fellow. Yep, I want to move. And then I'm going to create another folder, and it's going to be called CSS Crash Course. And after this, guess what we're going to do? We're going to do, now we're not going to do JavaScript. We're actually going to do a couple of projects, HTML and CSS only. You can do a lot of stuff without JavaScript, but at the end of the day, you will need JavaScript. But I don't want to jump straight to JavaScript, create a crash course on that. I want you to exercise a lot on HTML and CSS. Okay, so we have our CSS crash course folder in here. We're going to create a new file. We're going to call it index.html because we do need a HTML file. We're going to hold down Shift, exclamation mark. This is going to give us a HTML5 doc type. We're going to call this CSS crash course and then h1 with the content of CSS crash course. Boom. Right click, open with live server. Now, if you don't have those extensions installed, please check out my previous videos. Let's drag this to the right. I'm going to drag you to the left, and we can get started. Also, I'm going to zoom in here. It has larger resolution. No, that's too much. 150%. That's enough. Perfect. So let's get started with learning CSS. We have here an HTML file. We created a h1 tag. Now we're going to create a paragraph tag. Well, let's just work with the h1 tag. So let's say I want to add style to this little fellow right here. So I'm going to go into the first opening tag. H1 has H1. All the H tags have a opening and a closing tag. Check out the HTML crash course. And now we're going to use here property. we're going to type in here style. This is a property of a tag. Within here, we can now assign a key value pair of value or a property, let's say color, and then the value of the property, which will be, let's say, red. Okay, close it up with a semicolon. Initially, no, because it's only one key value pair here. And there we go. Our text is now red. Now, if I want to add multiple properties to this, then I have to close it up with a semicolon, meaning I'm going to write a new line, but it's going to be inline. Let's increase now, let's say, the font size, and font dash size, we're going to change it to 50 pixels. Okay, and we just increase the font size. So key value pairs is how you add style to your text. Now, this is not the way we're going to write CSS. This was the old way of writing. It's actually not CSS. There are a couple of styles within here. This is the way you can add style to your HTML tags. Let's say we're going to add here another one, a paragraph tag, call this style. So once again, this is just another example. We're going to add here a font weight of bold. Type here lorem 10. 10 words from lorem ipsum, and the text is bold. If I go here and delete this, then the text is normal again. Okay, so adding styles to our text. Now, let's quickly move to the real way we are going to work with CSS. That is going to, by the way, if you select something and then Control and /, you're going to comment it out. If you want to comment it back in, you repeat that action. So Control and /. There's the one right left to your space, to your shift. From your right shift, the next button. So Control and that button right to your shift button. Okay, now I want to add real style, use some real CSS. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to create a CSS file. We're going to create here in this folder a new file. We're going to call it style.css. You can call it whatever you want, but normally you would call it style. Okay, in order to make use of this file, go back here, comment this part out. I'm going to leave it in here. In order to make use of this file, we need to go up here in the head before the title. You can actually edit also after the title. We're going to create here a link tag. The link tag has two properties. One is the reference or the relationship of the link tag document to the document, which is a style sheet. And then right here in the href, we're going to tell it what we're linking it up to. Now we're going to link it up to a style.css file. After we hit save, and let's create here another h1 of my first CSS file. Now, in order to style this, we're going to move now to our CSS file. We're going to select the element that we want to style, and elements are selected exactly as they are written. So for example, I want to select my h1. I'm going to type in here h1 again. And why did I go down to the next level? I don't know, but the first line of code, so h1, and then open and close curly bracket, and whatever we type in between these two is considered then the style. We need to type in properties and values. So everything that I type as the first one, for example, color, again is the property, then column, now the value of that property, color will be now, let's say blue, and close it with a semicolon. Now, if you already have Prettier installed, as soon as if I don't do this, if I do something like this, if you have Prettier, the extension installed, and you press down, check out the previous video, and press Control save it, it's going to automatically close that for you. Okay, so let's add a font size of, let's say, going to change it to 2 pixels, make it really small, and increase it to 20 pixels. Okay, so this is the way we write CSS. We select the tag element from HTML, and we're going to style it. So the basic syntax here is selector. This is the selector. Let me just copy right in here. This is not CSS. Just going to, let's say, so selector. This is the selector. Then property is the property, and blue. So color is the property. Then we're going to add here a column. Then we're going to add the value and close it up with a semicolon. That's it. Okay, that's basically how you write CSS. Now the selector determines which element was selected, and the property, the style you want to change. For example, you want to add some comments, or for you later to know what this is, you can press down here on / star, just opening up a comment, and star and / again. I'm going to close the comment, and whatever you type in within these two green lines will count as non-code. Okay, so if I type in here, this is the way we change colors, then that's basically it. Okay, and the other one, this is the way we change the font size. That's it. So if I change this, it's going to take effect, but it won't influence the code itself. Also here, let's say it's red, and it's going to change to red, but this comment is not going to influence. So this is the way we type in comment. Also, you can type in here comment of class selectors. Okay, this was the element selector. And let me just add here paragraph tag of lorem, and enter lorem ipsum. And if I want to select that one, it's going to be paragraph. I'm going to show you something really quickly. So this is going to be color red, and I'm going to add another paragraph, paragraph tag and lorem and 10. And what you're going to realize now that both paragraph tags are red. If I change this to blue, then all of the paragraphs are blue. Even if I change here color and red, everything is now red again. I just overwritten the blue color. But I want the second one to be blue, for the love of Mike. Now, how do we do this? Each time you select here a element, all of the elements will be selected. In order to select something more specific, we have classes, we have IDs. So let's add a class. Let's say we're going to add the class of, and the way we add classes is go into the paragraph, the opening paragraph, and type in class. Okay. If I hit enter, it's going to automatically fill out, but the class needs to be assigned to something. So exactly as we had here, the style property is equal, and whatever I type in between these quotation marks will be now considered a class. You can also add multiple classes. So we're going to add here, let's say, a class of highlighted. In order to select this class, we're going to go to our CSS. Now, highlighted is a word. How do I know that this is a class? Because it could also be an ID. I did specify here in HTML that this is a class, but how does CSS know that this is a class? In order for us, or in order for CSS to recognize that this is a class, it needs to start with a dot. So dot highlight, open and close curly brackets, and whenever I type here, color blue, boom, only this specific class was affected. This specific paragraph tag with the class of highlighted. Now we could also add here a background color. Background color of red. It's going to be really ugly, but hey, there we go. Okay, now let's also create an ID. I'm going to create here my HTML a div tag, because content division tags can be 1,001 million of them. I'm going to give this an ID. Now the way I'm going to add an ID is typing out the word ID is equal and 2 quotation marks. And whatever I type in here, let's say, for example, main and content. Now it has the ID of main content, and this is the main content. Who would guess? Let's go to our CSS, and now let's select the ID selector. In order to select an ID, you're going to use the hash, so shift and 3, and then the ID name, which was main-content. Now you don't necessarily have to then open and close curly brackets. Also, you don't necessarily have to add the dash. You can also do camel case, make content as this, but the name of the ID that also has to be that way. So let's start in style this. So I'm just going to add to this a width of 80%. See, for now 80%. We can't see anything, so let's just add 10%. This is going to be smooshed together here because it does not have his entire width now, taking up only 10% of its initial width. Simple as that. Now let's go a couple of important properties as you should know when learning CSS. And you know what? I'm going to just add here a comment on important properties. Okay, we're going to start. You already saw color. So I'm going to take this div, and you know what? Now let's create another one. Let's create here a div with the ID of imp and props. Okay, let's create here a lorem ipsum. Going to have some fun with it. Let's select it. So hash imp props, open and close curly brackets, and let's get started with, let's say, color. We already know this, so we can have a named color, say red. I'm just going to override them. Then we can have, instead of red, we can have a hexadecimal color, so hex, and there are 6 decimals in a color. So for example, if I type in 0000000, yep, that's black. If I type in FFFFF, you You also have combinations of 3. So 3Fs is also white. Then let's do here a 00FF00, which is a green color. Now we also have a RGB color. I'm going to stop here. So color RGB. And RGB stands for red, green, and blue. And the combination between them is going to give you a color. So let's say I'm going to have here, and these are from 0 to 225 numbers. So say 0, 0, 0 is going to be completely dark. 255, getting into too much detail here. 255, 250 is going to be completely white. And any kind of other combination. So blah, 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 and blah, wait, too much. That is going to be a red color. Okay, so do here 1, and this is going to be, okay, that's trying to get it. Oops, opened Excel. That's not what I wanted. Okay, so let's say you're 10 and you're 140, and this is again a green color. Amazing. The same thing for background color. I'm just going to change this, and let's say we're going to go here with dark. So let's do a 15, 15, 15. Still should be pretty dark. Okay. Whoa, neon. Now we have font size. So it's going to be large, medium, small, extra large, so far and so on. You can also type in here a dimension. Normally we work in pixels. So 16 pixel, if I type in 16 pixel, nothing happens because that's the base pixel size of each and every web page. But if I type this, change this to 26. Also, you should work in multiples of 16s and divisions of 16. So 2, 2, 2. If you don't do something like 17, that's not a... You can do it, but normally you shouldn't do it. Okay, so let's say you have 16, that after that should come, let's say 22 or 18 and stuff like that. You could also use RAM. So basically, if I do 1 RAM, so 16 and 1 RAM is the same thing. If I do 2 RAM, it's going to be 2 times 16, 32. So 2 RAM. Oh, no. Okay. So this and 32 pixels is basically the same. You can see. So 2 RAM doubles the size. Okay, then we have font family. And usually you only have a couple of font families here. So sit, so far and so on. Just change the font family. Normally you only have a couple of font families, and they differ depending on browsers. So Mac and PC has different, not browsers. Let's say Microsoft's Edge or whatever it's called now, and Safari have different fonts. So this can be used for Edge 12, Firefox, Safari 1, Chrome, Internet Explorer. Oh my God. And Opera. Yes. So basically you're changing the font. Then you have background color. I always showed you background color. Then we have width, which can change the width of this container. Let's say it should be only 300 pixels, not XP. You're not playing here a game. Or you could also do here percentage. I always showed you percentage. You could also do viewport width, which is, let's say 30 viewport widths. Yes, there we go. Okay, or 50 is going to be 50% of the viewport, or 80. You could also do percentage here, and so on and so on. Now, of course, if we have width, we also have height, and this could be auto. This could be again expressed in pixels. This could be expressed in RAM. This could be expressed in percentages. Let's do only 50%, for example. Then we have a square. Too much. Let's say 300%, and we don't have enough content. Or let's do a width of auto and a height of 300 pixels. And so you can see it's overflowing now. So let's go back to 300. And now we're going to add some margin. Now, the margin is the space around the element. So what is the element? This is the element. And if I add margin, it's going to be basically pushed to the 4 types of margins. Margin top, right, bottom, left. And that is also for padding. And let's start with, if I only type in margin and type in, let's say, 32 pixels, going to add around the element. It's larger. Then right click on the website, inspect. Going to open up the inspect, and right here up in the corner, right corner, you have the select button. If you click it, then you can select elements in your web page. Now, if you click this element and drag this puppy up from here, we just selected the ID of imp props. Now this has had a color red, which we canceled, then color green, which we remained, a background color of RGB color, font size of 32 pixels, font family elusive, width of outer. So basically everything that we typed in here, a code, we now have it here. Now there's also, because this is a div, it is displayed as a block. We're going to come to this later on, but this is where I want to come to. Margin 32 pixels. If I change, you can also change it from here. So if you double click here and add 10, see the margin changing up in the element to 10. It also has a border padding at the element itself. So if I hover here, you can see what is being selected. The border is 0, but if I increase this to 20, then that's too much. Let's say only 1. Can I add border? No. Why? Go to right. No, it's not working because I have to add CSS padding 5. I can add some padding, but we're going to come to padding a bit later on. So this is the box model. You're going to hear about the box model a lot when you're using CSS. Through the box model, we understand that the element is actually wrapped around a margin. It has a border. We're going to go. Let's quickly change the background color to something else. I'm going to now use, instead of, you know what, I'm just going to comment this out and use here another background color of name color gray, and now add a border of 1 pixel. So you need to specify the width of the border, and then the type of the border. It could be solid, it could be dashed. We're going to use solid this time. And the color now of the border, we're going to use here hexadecimal of green. Okay, now let me increase this, because now you know what, I'm going to change this to red. So name color red. And there we go. We have a little red border. You can also see now that it has values here. Now we can play around with them. Now we have a thicker border to the top and a all-around border 0.6 and so on. Okay, so this is the box model. Margin, border, padding, and content itself. The content is 300 pixels of, has a, I make it larger. It's going to change. So this is flexible. Okay, perfect. Let's close this up. Now let's go back to our code. I have a lot to learn. Now let's add a bit of padding. Just type in the word padding. Now we can add a 20 pixel padding all around. That's much. Let's increase now the height to 400. There we go. We are now perfectly in our box model. Now also you could use the text align property here, which can then align, let's say, center content. Can align it. Normally the content starts from left to right, but we can also align it to the right, and so far and so on. Let's leave it to the left if you want to change it back again. So let's really quickly go over the box model again. This is extremely important for you to understand in order to know later on what you're changing. So right click, inspect, make it a bit larger, select this little element, go down so you can understand here what is happening. So the margin is basically a space that is being created between the element and its surrounding, whether it is what is above the element, underneath the element, left and right to the element. It has really no color. The next thing is the border, which can have a color. If I increase this 20, you can see more color in the border. So now we have 20 pixels of red color. Also, if I increase it here on the right side to 20, you can see here more border. Want a complete 20, 20, 20. Going to have it. And I added too much padding. Okay, so that's a complete border here for our little fellow. And the content in the middle is the actual content of the element. Text, the image, the whatever we put in there. The padding here, right after the content, is the space inside the element. So it's inside the element and around the content. It's directly around the content. After that comes the border, which is the border of the element, and we could give it width and color. Then the margin is the space outside of the element, and it's around the border. Now, understanding the box model is crucial for controlling the layout of your web page. So keep this in mind. Margin, border, padding, element. Okay, so let's do a bit of practice here. All again. I'll go back to our HTML. I'm going to again comment out everything that we just did. I'm going to copy in here another text. Also close up the left part. We don't, because you can select HTML and style from up here. So I just copied in a H1. Welcome to my website. Also save. Welcome to my website. This is a paragraph tag and a div with a highlight class. Now, accepting this newly created elements, we have here also the body tag. We can also change how the body tag looks. Let's go back into our CSS. Now I'm going to grab onto the body tag and change the font family to sans serif. Okay, you just saw the font changing. Now let's also change the background color of the entire web page. So background color, I'm going to add here a little, just a tinge darker white color. So 0F, 0F, actually it's F0F, F0, F0, F0. Okay, so that's just a tinge of a gray color. Now let's take our H1 again. Basically, I'm going to comment out everything that I did up here. So we have these comments in here. And to comment out the content. Okay, so our H1 will now have a color of a hexadecimal number hash 333. It's not completely dark. And also a text align to the center. Okay, now our paragraph tag will have a color, and it's going to override everything that I just did, of 666, number of the beast. Okay, and then let's add a margin to the bottom in dash bottom of 10 pixels. Now the class of highlight then will change its background color to yellow, padding 10 pixels all around. And I'm going to give it a orange border. Let's give it actually a 2 pixel orange border. And let's leave the color also as this. Okay, now you may recognize that this alignment is not like this alignment. So we can either add to the top one a padding to the left of 10 pixels, and we're going to have the same alignment, or take out the other padding. I would prefer this. Now let's say that I want this to be actually a link to somewhere. So let's go back to our HTML. I'm going to wrap this text right here in our div with the anchor tag and cut it out from here and paste it in the anchor tag. You know, you can see that it's signifying that this is a link, and a link looks like this. It has a underline automatically to it, and it has a bluish color. Now, if I want this to be linked to my website, inheartmedia.com, I also have to add here the HTTPS // Now, this will send you to my website. We have to web development also. So let's go back from here. And let's say I want to open this in a blank page. We talked about the property of target and underscore blank. Now, if I click on it, I'm going to open it up in a new tab on a separate web page. Okay, now let's go back to our site. And let's say I want to change the color. So change something in this anchor tag. I'm going to go back to CSS. And I'm going to teach you now a pseudo class, which is the hover pseudo class. So select the anchor tag and then column. So only 2 columns, only 1 column, and then type in hover. Now, whenever I hover over this element, I want something to happen. And let's say I want the text decoration to be, take out the underline, so to be none. So if I hover now over this, it's going to take out the text decoration. Pretty cool, isn't it? Well, I could also add it back in. So instead of this, I'm going to select the anchor tag again, say text decoration none, change the color to hash 666, so a grayish color, hit save, you're going to see that it's been taken out. And then when I hover over it, it's going to be underlined. Okay, so now it's underlined only when I hover over it. So now if I click on it, it's going to open up the web page. If I go back, I could also add here another pseudo class. I can also hear the title of pseudo class. And let's say that when the anchor tag is visited, the color will change to a darker color. Refresh the page, close this one up. Now if I click on it, come back to it, it's going to have a darker color. Let's say purple. Now after pseudo classes, there are also pseudo elements. Let me another comment, pseudo elements. Now these style a specific part of an element. So for example, let's say I want to add to this is a highlighted section. I want to add, at the end of it, I want an exclamation mark for whatever reason. I'm going to select the anchor tag and say double column after, open close curly brackets, and say the content will be between quotation marks, a exclamation mark. Hit enter, and there we go. We just added something to it. Now, where is this useful? Well, actually, I could add here, and let's change this to font size and small. I could change the content here to visited. Okay. Now, this should only appear, we could use it in combinations, when this is visited. So after I click on it, come back, you know what, I have to do it this way. And let's say we're going to use here hover instead of visited and go over it. going to appear visited. Okay, so simple as that. Now, there are multiple selectors, multiple types of selectors. We're not going to go into all of them because this is a crash course and we're going to, we would have a lot to talk about, but I'm just going to do something really quickly. Let's say we're going to create a unordered list, a couple of list items, and let's just say I'm going to type in here, list item of item 1, go out of it and multiply it with 6. There we go. We have 6 items and it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Fair enough here. So unordered list, let's do a couple of things here. So let's say I want to select something within this list. Now I could do ul li and say color red. I could do ul greater than li and say color blue. The difference between these two selectors, and you can see it explicitly here, is that this is selecting all of the LIs within the UL, and this is selecting also all of the LIs within the unordered list element, but the elements that are direct children of this element. Because if I would do here another LI outside item, this is not going to be affected. Even if I select here, all LIs should be green color. Just telling it to be green, it should be green. Then the outside element is green, but it's not affected due to the fact that I have outside of this selector, I have more specific selectors. So let's really quickly talk about specificity. It's the most important thing to understand in CSS. If I select the unordered list, color changes color to a dark color. Let me tell this. We're going to have a dark color to all of the LIs. If I say that all LIs within the web page should have the color red, then all LIs within the web page will have the color red. Now, if I'm more specific that all of the LIs that are in the UL should have the color green, this is more specific, and this means that only these elements that are in the list will have the color green. Now, if I go in here and add to this, the very first one, the ID of 1, also use numbers, and to the second one, we're going to add the class of 2, or class, let's say class, and this is going to be ID, so you can understand it more easily. Now, if I say that the UL, now let's say, I'll do it this way, the ID of ID, color blue, then this will change the color of the first element to blue, although I'm underneath of all of these instructions that everything should be either red or green or something like that, because this is more specific. Now, I can be even more specific than this. And let me just show you that if I do here li color yellow, this is not going to overwrite the first ID. But if I do here the UL with the LI with the ID, so you need to directly assign it to it with the ID of ID, to have the color purple, then this is even more specific than this ID up here, and it's going to overwrite. So even if I bring this down here, it's not going to overwrite the purple color with the blue color, because this is more specific even as the ID. The specificity means actually that you don't only tell it that, hey, I live in this, you don't only tell somebody, come on, I can do this, woo! Don't only tell your friend that I live in New York, you tell your friend, I live in New York, on the street, in the district, on the street, with the house number and the apartment. That is more and more specific than just say the house number 3. Okay, although the house number 3 is really specific, but you have to have more context to it. So the most specific way you can specify something, Jesus, this is so stupid, but I know it's hard, but the best way you can specify something is by going down that rabbit hole. Okay, it's the same thing with classes. Okay, now that we color specificity, I'm really shortly going to cover Flexbox. This is the way to display something, and the grid system. So let's start with Flexbox. So what is the Flexbox display system? Before this, we had really hard time displaying things. Right now, this list is displayed in a column. If I would like this list to be displayed in a row direction, I will have to do a lot of magic, use float and so on and so on. So what I'm going to do now is take this UL and say that the display of this element should be in a flex direction. Now, when you display something as flex, let me show you the elements. I'm going to drag this to the right side. It's smaller. So I just hit save. This is why you see these elements squished together. One last thing before we do that, you can take an li and tell it that you can also do it to the entire list. So either you do it to the list or the allies. I would suggest you do it to the allies. It's going to impact, if you do it to the allies, it's going to impact all of the allies on the website. You do a style, a list style, and none. Okay, this is going to remove those dots. So we have multiple items in a list. The list consists of 6 items and one outside item, which is the outsider. Everybody has an outsider in his family. Now this list was displayed in a column. As soon as I told the parent, which is the UL, to display its children, so everything that is wrapped around, to display as flex, the default way of displaying something as flex is in a row direction. If I want to change the direction, I have to specify that the flex dash direction should be now a column, or you could do a column dash reverse. So take a look, don't hit save. Take a look at the list. It's going to flip 6 and 1. Boom, 6, 5, 4, flip. Okay. Now, if I want to change it back to a row, we could flex direction row or row reverse. It's the same thing, row and reverse. Going to reverse the elements. Now, the flex system is really complicated. I'm going to go more in depth with this in, you can check out my courses, or I have a bunch of videos on it. Much more complicated than this, but just remember this is a way of displaying something. Now, if I want to have space, but this is the last thing I'm going to show you, space between the items, I could do something like add a gap, and this is a all-around gap. Because the Flexbox, as the grid, is displayed on 2 axes. The Y, that's the horizontal x, and the x is the vertical x. So if I add a gap of 10 pixels, going to add a gap between the elements, but also if I would change this to just Y or X, let me just change the flex direction here, direction to column, and specify here that the gap is 0 and 5 pixels. Take a look at what happens. 0 is on the x-axis and y is on the 5 is on the y-axis. So whoops, y is now displaying as 0. Gap between the, if I change the flex direction now to row, we're going to have 5 pixels. Let me exaggerate this, just inch 25, 20, whatever. So this and column just going to be 0. Okay, we can specify in which direction we should have gap between the elements. Okay, now I'm also going to show you now grid. So same thing. You know what? I'm going to create another list. So this is going to be, just copy this, paste it down here, second list. Let's be more specific. Let's this have a ID of grid. No, grid list grid. No, grid list. Grid dash list. So let's say that the UL with the ID of grid dash list will be displayed now as grid. Now, as soon as you do this, nothing happens because now you need to define how you want your grid to be displayed. So a grid system is basically formed out of columns and rows, like a table. So if I do here grid template columns, I can just assign it as auto, or we're going to do here a 1FR. No, let's do pixels. It's much easier. Let's do 10 pixels. That'll be 10 pixels. How many elements do I have? I have 6 elements. So let's do 6 times 10 pixels, 10 pixels, 10 pixels. Now I passed in here XP once more, 10 pixels. So 3, and if I only do 3, then I'm going to have 2 columns. A gap. Also, this has the gap property of 10 pixels. Oh, that is not good. What am I doing here? There's not enough gap. 40. There we go. So yeah, there's something called inheritance. So due to the fact that this UL is not specific, it's all of the ULs on the website, this second UL already has all of the properties that the first UL has, due to the fact that I wasn't specific enough. So take a look at this list and now go to your first list and add a class of list 1. And now let's copy this list 1, go to our UL, dot for class, paste in list 1, and don't hit save. Take a look at this list. Now go back, click here, hit save. Let's do a color, maybe more obvious of green. And now take out this class. And you see all lists are green. But if I add back the class, now the elements, this is why this didn't work before it. This is too much. Let's do a white, dark. Okay, perfect. So our second list, we're talking about displaying something as grid. We display this as grid, the grid template, meaning we're going to use 3 columns. If I add another one, 10 pixel, then we're going to have 4 columns. And it's just going to fill the element with the rest of the elements in the next rows. Now I could also do fractions here. So 1 fraction is 1 column. If I add another fraction, that is going to divide the entire space into 2 fractions. It's going to take all of the elements and push them into 2 columns because I specified that I should have in my template of the grid, only if I give it only 2 values, 1FR, there is 2 columns. If I change this to 2FR, then I'm going to have more space. This is taking off 1 fraction, this is taking off 2 fractions. And if I tell this that the second added third column, which should be only 1 fraction, then this column is smaller, this is larger, and this is the same size as the first color. Perfect. You can do the same thing with rows, grid template rows, and so on and so on. The grid system is a bit more complicated than the Flexbox. And I have a bunch of courses on only CSS, so check them out. They're also down in the video description if you want to learn more CSS, more about the grid system and the Flexbox. I also have a couple of startup videos on my YouTube channel, so definitely check them out. Okay, so that's it for now. The next video, of course, will be 1 project or multiple projects. I'm going to do multiple projects. I just don't know if they're going to be in 1 video or multiple videos, but I think I'm going to do multiple videos. So 1 and done. And then we're going to move to JavaScript. So hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Come on, be so kind. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed and click the notification bell in order to get notified when I post new videos. Also, check out the entire series. I'm going to add more and more to this. We're going to go to frameworks and do all of the amazing stuff with creating entire web pages and web applications. So I'm Norbert and I teach web development. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.